And tonight, on 15 Minutes, we take a look at what is arguably one of the most significant Australian industrial disputes in recent times, the 1998 Waterfront dispute. Later, we interview Stephanie Rice about her recent affair with NBA star Kobe Bryant, followed by an interview with a local cat that took a leap of faith from a light bulb.
This year marks the 14th anniversary of what is believed to be the most significant industrial dispute in Australian history, the 1998 Waterfront dispute. The primary issue surrounding the waterfront was the ongoing inefficiency of the Australian port system compared to overseas competitors. The Howard government and Patrick Stevedore and Company aimed to decrease costs and increase profits to improve the competitiveness of the port industry on the international stage.
Corporate restructure and individual contracts were deemed necessary by Patrick's management to maintain a strong business market share in a global environment. However, the action of decreasing the workforce and replacing existing workers with non-union employees sparked what would be known as the most significant industrial dispute of its time. The workforce reform began to reshape the future employment relations both on the waterfront and in other Australian industries.
There were a number of key players involved in the 1998 Waterfront dispute. The two key parties were the Maritime Union of Australia and Patrick Stevedores, now known as Patrick Corporation. The Maritime Union of Australia was formed in 1993 through the amalgamation of the WWF and the Seamen's Union. It was a small union with some 10,000 members, however its power came from its militancy and the absence of strong competitive pressure on the waterfront. At the time of the dispute, MUA were in fear of fines and union deregistration. However, they had a strategy that would lean on international solidarity and not hesitate to make use of the court system. Patrick Stevedores were one of the two companies that held the duopoly on Australian ports, with P&O being the other. Patrick was a port and stevedore and company that ran 17 wharfs across Australia and were working closely with the government and the National Farmers Federation to remove unionised labour in Australia, starting at the waterfront. A third important party was the new Conservative federal government, elected in 1996 and led by John Howard. With Peter Reith as his Industrial Relations Minister, John Howard wanted to smash the MUA and introduce non-union workforce on the wharves. In 1996, the Howard government introduced a piece of anti-union legislation called the Workplace Relations Act, which amongst other things restricted the workers' ability to strike and had provisions to fine unions for illegal industrial action. The Howard government in 1997 voted to support Patrick and take radical action against the MUA. Along with these three major players came a number of other stakeholders, including the National Farmers Federation, the Australian Council of Trade Unions, and an assortment of officials of other unions and Labor parliamentarians.
A number of parties were interviewed at the time to determine their position in the dispute. Excuse me, sir, would you mind answering a question for us?
Yeah, no problem.
As a wharf worker, how do you feel about the current actions of Patrick Corp with regards to your personal life?
Me and my son have been working on the wharves for a living for a long time now. And all we want is to be guaranteed that we'll come home safe. I don't know what my family would do if I didn't have this job. All we want is these big shots like Johnny Howard and guys at Patrick's to stop picking on us small guys. So we're banding together and we won't stop until we get what we want. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, mate.
Our sole objective is to lower the costs of shipping to and from Australia. The port charges here are 2 to 3 times more than those overseas. The continual underperformance of the workers is driving the costs up, and the indirect costs from the delays and unreliability is stifling the industry. We want to decrease costs and increase profits to increase the competitiveness of our business. We're looking to replace our union labour forces with a cheaper and more compliant labour force. The Howard government's new industrial relations legislation has given us the power to increase the competitiveness of our business, and we plan to take full advantage of it.
We are looking to protect the rights of our members. We will fight for the safe working conditions, pay rises, and for the protection of the unionised workforce in Australia. Australian workers need the ability to be protected from corporations and the Howard government. The workers need bargaining power and we will give it to them. We're an island nation. We are a long way from our trading partners. Trade is more important to the future success, the economic success, the national success and national interest than ever before. And what did those bastards do? Remove one of the fundamental support mechanisms that gives us independence and sovereignty, the right to carry our own cargoes. We're completely against the idea of individualistic work relations on the wharves.
After the dispute was settled, this footage was sent to us anonymously.
Look, our stevedoring performance is bloody woeful, alright? Our ports are charging higher costs than our overseas competitors, our productivity is lower, and our services are less reliable. Not only this, but our port and infrastructure charges are 2 to 3 times more than our competitors.
That's shocking. That is shocking. We said that when we got into government, we were going to address workplace relations. And I say we don't stop. We don't stop until we destroy the unions. We need to fix this.
Night raids on port facilities around Australia began on the 7th of April in 1998. Security guards and dogs overflowed onto wharves to remove all unionised workforce. These actions were deemed necessary by Patrick's Corporation to avoid unnecessary vandalism to port infrastructure that might delay productivity at further expense to the company. 1,400 permanent employees and 300 part-time workers were left unemployed this night as Patrick's Corporation announced the outsourcing of jobs to contracting companies, all under the one goal of improving productivity and reliability of the waterfront.
After appealing to the Justice North, the Federal Court's full bench and the High Court of Australia, the dispute fell into the favour of the unions.
The unions and Patrick negotiated an agreement which was adopted by the company in June of 1998. 4,000 waterside workers were made redundant at a total cost of $419 million, of which $165 million was contributed by the government.
At the conclusion of the dispute, both parties agreed that smaller work crews would be formed. Longer regular hours were enforced and the company maintained control over the rosters, while the employees gained productivity bonuses for faster learning.
But would this make the Australian waterfront globally competitive? National crane rate productivity in the 5 major ports has risen to 27.8 containers per hour compared to the 17 or 18 containers per hour in the 1998 statistics.
Ships are turned around faster and the volume of cargo being moved has increased significantly, but we will still have a long way to go to become as efficient as our overseas competitors.
The dispute has not only had a lasting impact on the lives and memories of those directly involved, people including the likes of Johnny the Wharfie and Mike McMike from Patrick Corp, but it has had a lasting impact, a metaphorical stain on the memories of the general Australian public. Not only that, but this dispute heralded the beginning of a storm of changes to industrial relations in the Australian workplace. The tide had turned in the government's response to industrial relations. We now had a coalition government willing to seize the opportunity and make a stern warning to the unions that change was on the horizon. However, due to the unpopular backlash, the government was forced to keel over, tack back, and hold off on more reforms. Nevertheless, further changes did eventually come in the form of the highly controversial 2005 Work Choices legislation. It was a move designed to improve employment levels. However, the move eventually backfired for the coalition government, bringing in much hardship coming into the 2007 elections and consequently leaving the party shipwrecked on election day. As for Patrick Corp and the MUA, the dispute was not over. In fact, it is still ongoing. Over the past 14 years, there have been continual waves of attack by both the company and the unions that have reignited the dispute. The company has been attempting to reduce workforce requirements through the integration of an automated technology system. Conversely, the union and workers have been looking for job security, safety improvements and pay increases. Just this month, Patrick has announced new ambitions to automate and expand its operations. News the MUA are none too happy about. It's difficult to make recommendations about how disputes such as this could be managed. Nevertheless, in hindsight, I guess there are a few key points that could be discussed. From a political perspective, the government made a risky decision to play favourites with big business and Patrick's Corp over the general Australian working republic. But considering the government's commitment to improving Australia's international competitiveness, maybe this was the right decision. As for Patrick Corp, the company made a number of quite hostile moves throughout this dispute. Most notably with the decision to hold a late-night lockout of the dockyards and then use armed guards and attack dogs on its own staff. Possibly an overreaction. Whilst the workers can be considered the victims in this dispute, it must be noted that their response to the ordeal, in conjunction with the unions, was potentially quite irrational and immature. They attempted to use guerrilla-like tactics to create public peer pressure on the company and even the government.
Thank you for listening. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for.